Hi, everyone. I'll admit all. Hi, everyone. Come on in. Hey, welcome, welcome. It's good to see everyone. Hey, Jenny Beal, how are you?
Hi, Bill. I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm good. Well, just to give you guys a little background, we meet like 10 or 15 minutes early and we start talking. And I feel it would be rude if I didn't say, oh, wait a minute, let me get rid of that. Oh, let me get rid of that. Oh, that's funny. Okay, we had a. Uh, I'm at a house that I'm working on. Lisa and I bought a house in York, Maine, and I've been working on it for about 6 weeks. And we're going to move in about 10 days. So I'm here at the house in our spare bedroom, uh, just because I've got people working outside, and after this broadcast, I'll go back and help them. But I'm happy to be here and take a break and and really dive in with all of you with the thing I love the most, which is the satsangs and the speaking of truth as it's presented by Francis Lucille in this book and previous books, John Klein, many from Rupert Spira. And I'm very, very pleased to have a co host as bright a light as Jenny Beal. Thank you for being here, Jenny.
It's an absolute pleasure to be with you, Bill. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, and so do I. And thank you all for being just like part of this book club family, the Rupert, Francis, John Klein, the truth family, really, that is, it's just this vibration that comes from these ideas that we talk about. And that's what makes it, so much fun. It's not, and also it just has a nice vibe. I think I'm going on 3 years of having the book club, and I just do it for the love of it. I put it in the member area of our membership site for one book, and it just didn't feel as free. And this truth, the truth is about being free, not bound by ideas and commercialism of everything. And I felt like that was a little too commercial. That's just what I felt about it. So we're looking at the second half of chapter 7. Jenny, I think it starts on page, is it 106 where we left off? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Where would you like to pick up?
I'd like to pick up actually at the beginning of 107, although it refers back a little bit to 106. 106 was a little bit more about Ramana Maharshi and the Ashtavakra Gita and really finding a correspondence between the two. And Francis used a particular analogy to help the questioner to see that the two weren't saying opposing things at all. But then there was this follow-up question on, I think it's on page 107, but you just made a distinction between the perceiver and the perceived. And I felt that illustrates really quite an important point, because what a teacher is pointing to in answer to a specific question, you need to look for what's being pointed to rather than getting stuck in the pointing equipment, as it were. So all the analogies, all the metaphors and explanations have their limitations. And so he explains in answer to this question on page 107 that in order to understand that we're not a body mind, most people find it necessary to first separate out the perceiver from the perceived. but really that's an artificial separation. It's artificial, but it does help us go to that experience of pure consciousness, a consciousness without objects. And that's called turiya in Sanskrit. So he uses the word turiya here. And that's our essential nature. That's the perceiver. By making this distinction, it helps us to see that we're not any object that we perceive. So we don't identify with a fragment of our experience, a body mind. But he then goes on to explain that this is just a first step, and the second step is to understand everything is consciousness. Consciousness is the source and substance of everything. So in the first step, he used the analogy, the metaphor of the sun and the moon, and the sun being self-luminous, but the moon shines with the reflected light of the sun. But for this second step, you need a different metaphor, the waves and the ocean. And that's one that Atmananda actually used in a very beautiful poem he wrote called Atma Darshan. The very first chapter uses this analogy. And Francis says, all objects are like waves that arise out of this ocean, are made of the same substance as the ocean and dissolve back into it. Therefore, they are always one with it. So the separation into a perceiver and perceived doesn't give a full understanding. It's just a first step. Yeah. And the second step is that understanding that it's just artificial, that the two are really one.
Yeah, yeah. It's a little bit like the neti neti is the first step.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes.
Of recognition. It's a beginning step to bring to give a distinction that you're not the object.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. But then later on, and this is what Rupert did for me in helping me to realize and then experience the intimacy that occurs in the outward facing path that includes everything that you first were neti neti is now is the essential. It's rising from the essence of I am.
Yes, exactly.
The tantric approach.
Yes, the outward facing path. Yeah.
Yeah, that helped me. I was at a Garrison retreat when I was first introduced to that, and I came out of meditation. Our eyes were closed after, it was a 2-hour meditation. It was like, oh my God, the light had been turned on.
Yes.
It was like, oh my God, yes. You know what I mean? It was like I could see.
Yes.
The blind man, I was like the blind man that had his eyes now as he could see. That was my experience at Garrison from that, including that connection with the tantric that he after. So anyway, if you're watching and listening, go back and maybe Jenny can find one of those meditations and put it in the book club as a YouTube, because it is a profound. It's a profound shift of awareness when that happens, and you could do it just from watching a video.
Yes,
I'm sure.
It's such an important step, and it's actually a step that in many spiritual traditions they don't actually take you that far. They just they take you the first step, and then they leave you to find the second step on your own. But yes, the direct path, we explicitly explore that second step, and that's a really important one.
Wow. So anyway, that was a little bit of a sidebar, but important and relative to what we're talking about here, because it really does bring you to the direct experience.
Yes.
It says there was a question. What is this the question you were referring to? What do you make of? I like this answer. What do you make of the notion of avatars? Everything is an avatar.
Right, yes.
Everything
yes,
is.
yes.
That was funny. There is a notion that certain beings, and it goes ... What does that mean?
What he's referring to is the traditional ideas about avatars, that some people are born as avatars, so they're kind of born with a recognition of their true nature. He's saying that the notion itself is also an avatar.
Okay.
Everything that's manifested is the self. So in other words, he's really dismissing that traditional interpretation that there are some special people, in other words.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I like what the last sentence in this paragraph says, because this is sort of like, in fact, I was surprised to see this statement come out of Francis's mouth. Everything is the Son of God. Using that term, that's a Bible term, and it's a Course in Miracles term. And for hearing Francis refer to it is a little bit refreshing to me, because it almost gives permission to use Christian terms sometimes, even from someone like Francis Lucille.
Yes, exactly. And in the same way that he uses Indian terms or tantric words, he's got such a tremendous knowledge of all the different traditions, and he tries to relate his answers to where the questioner is coming from. So the chances are that he knew that questioner came from a love of Christianity.
Yeah. So it says this notion is also, so he says everything that is manifested, just like you said, is the self manifesting itself. These ideas about avatars are concepts. It is better to understand that everything is the self, because that abolishes all distinctions. It takes us directly to the truth. Everything is God. And I would say, I just want to change that. Everything is awareness.
Yes.
Everything is presence. So everything is an avatar of God. Everything is the Son of God. Everything that appears is the self coming out of the void. And I really loved the language. I just loved how simple and clear, and coming from a Christian perspective, and I was a Christian for 25 years, so I connect with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love the poetry of it, even though I've never been a Christian, but I still love the poetry of that language.
Yeah. And the King James is kind of fun to play on that. However, when I go back and I read some of the things from the King James, and they use phrases that Jesus was said to have said, I now go back and say, I don't think that's quite right. Even though he said that, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
that he would say that, because he was a master, and like as Francis is, and Francis even says, masters make mistakes, but
Yes,
and it could be that he just misspoke.
Yeah.
And was quoted, or they just maybe reworded what he said. Who knows?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anything else on 107? And do we have any questions? Rick West, how you doing? Good to see you. All these steps and tantric tricks are like training wheels. Yes, but they seem absolutely necessary. Absolutely. Yeah, I know.
Yes.
You come to a point where something is said where you realize, okay, it's time to take the training wheels off.
Yes, and we come to that a bit later on in this chapter as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So 108, I underlined it something in that first paragraph. It says it is necessary to make this distinction, the distinction of, okay, so I'll read the last paragraph on 107 first. When we say that we are the perceiver and not the perceived, it is in order to go to the experience of pure consciousness, of turiya, what you were saying. Usually, we believe that we are the body-mind. So the truth seeker has to be reminded that the body-mind is perceived. I like to call that the Bill movie or the Jenny movie or the
Yes.
Rick
Yes.
West movie. It says has to be reminded that the body-mind is perceived. That which perceives is I, consciousness. Everything that is perceived is an object.
Yeah.
It is necessary to make this distinction because we usually identify with an object, a fragment. We don't think I am the table, I am my clothes, I am my car. However, we do think I am this body, and the rest is not me. We identify with a fragment of our experience. In order to remove this identification, the Advaita tradition uses a two-step process.
Yes.
Yeah. Neti neti, and then I am, and then all of this is what I am.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. Or arises in or arises as a reflection of what I am.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else on 108, Jenny?
No, I think maybe we've covered that. Maybe we go on to the question at the top of 109, which I think is an important one because I think it relates to the experience which a lot of us have had, and it's a whole series actually of questions which are really the same question, which is interesting because the questioner was almost not happy to let go of where he was coming from. So it says, sometimes I experience ecstatic or very peaceful states, but they do not last, and the rest of my life seems bland and uninteresting by comparison. And it's Francis explains that these are just states of the mind, and he calls them traps, the trap of Anandamaya Kosha. I thought maybe I just explain what koshas are. This refers to part of the traditional Advaita Vedanta teaching, and the koshas are sheaths which veil the self. The light of the self from our understanding. So there's actually 5 of them, and it starts with Annamaya Kosha. That's not Ananda, that's Annamaya Kosha, which is a food sheath, physical body. So these are all things we identify with. So we identify with the body to start with. Then Pranamaya Kosha, which is the energy sheath, so the breath, the life force. And we identify with that in the sense we feel that we're destined, what we essentially are is destined to die. And then there's Manamaya Kosha, which is the mind sheath, and that's really the identification with a set of habitual thoughts that create the separate self. And then Vijnanamaya Kosha, it's the intellect or the knowledge sheath. And that's really about not crystallizing the knowledge, not looking at what's being pointed to, but not trying to crystallize it into a form of words, which in fact he refers to later in this chapter, He's really talking about Vijnanamaya Kosha. And then finally, Anandamaya Kosha is the last veil of the self. And that's really the understanding that enlightenment is not an experience. That sheath is the belief that this wonderful experience we have had is what enlightenment is, and really that wonderful experience is just a state of the body and the mind. So that's he describes it as the last level of ignorance, and that is the traditional Advaita Vedanta teaching.
Yeah, it's a subtle distinction that also has to. There's something that sees that.
Exactly, and it's whatever it is that sees that. Equally sees the times when there's misery, depression, a feeling of anger, a feeling of sadness, sees all of those, and it's that, and it's the recognition that in itself, that which sees, is inherently happy.
Yeah, and happy. I like what he said, that William Blake said. He who binds himself or herself to a joy does the winged life destroy.
Yes.
That sounds like a little bit of poetry right there.
It is one of his poems. I can't remember which one now, but yes.
Yeah, and it definitely is definitely is very, very crisp in what it's saying.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
It says under that, there's a question under that says, I had an experience 30 years ago. I love as soon as somebody says I did, or I had,
Yeah.
you know they are going deep into quicksand.
Yeah.
I had an experience 30 years ago in which I was blissfully happy. Everything was so vibrant, but it vanished, and I have never experienced it again. That's a classic chasing after the carrot.
It's exactly the same question, and in a way, Francis's answer is the same answer. But I really feel for the questioner, because it was the same for me 30 years ago, but it was what eventually brought me to Rupert. That I had an experience of bliss which lasted over 3 months. It lasted a long time. It was permanent throughout all the ups and downs of life in that time, and then it just gradually faded. And the problem was, as Rupert pointed out, I misconceptualized it. I had thought that what was important was that feeling of relaxation in the body, was that feeling of peacefulness in the mind, that sense that everything is myself, and then it disappeared. But what Rupert has explained, and this happens to an awful lot of people, what Rupert often says is that it's like a free sample. You're given a free sample, and then you need to allow the joy that you feel as a result of that free sample to propel you into the self-inquiry that will ultimately make that understanding permanent, or make it clear. In fact, it's really about a clarification of understanding.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's great to have resources like the greatest teachers in the world.
Yes.
It takes time. I like this statement that Francis gave that, though. It takes time to understand. So that's like I mean, that's allowing uh, time to be working in your favor, and
Yes.
not thinking, oh, you have to always be in the moment or in the now.
Yeah.
Otherwise you must be out of alignment or something. So I like hearing this practical statement from Francis. It takes time to understand that the happiness in a happy state never comes and goes. Whatever was happy in that happy state 30 years ago is still present right now. It is happiness itself. You objectified it and attached it to an experience that happened 30 years ago. To be hypnotized by the past prevents us from being knowingly this happiness in the present. Understand that the perfume of this experience is still present. It has never left you. In fact, it is precisely because it has never left you that you keep thinking about it.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, that puts it right in perspective for you.
It does,
Or
but it's
for me.
interesting that the question doesn't let up at that stage. He goes on to say, "I've had other experiences in which everything is not vibrantly happy, but peacefully happy, and everything just flows, and there's no feeling of restlessness or ego." I was just referring to that particular one because it was so vibrant. And Francis says it's important not to identify with past experiences, especially with past spiritual experiences. On the whole, one should refrain from talking about them or even thinking about them. Every time we think of such an experience, we should immediately understand that the happiness that was present then is still present now, and use it as a means of coming back to the present, of forgetting the past.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
Use it, but the mind is so clever. It wants to come in and snatch that moment, man.
it does, yes.
It wants to say, "Oh yeah, yeah. If only I had that again." it comes in, and I think that might be that verse. There's a verse in the Bible that says that awakening or the rapture or whatever they call it comes like a thief in the night, and I think it's the mind that does that.
Yes.
The mind comes in like a thief in the night, like a cat burglar.
Yes,
Uh, anyway,
yes.
is there anything else on that before we turn the page? Oh, and Rick had a question. So Rick said, experientially, can a distinction be made between words such as understanding, insight, and samadhi, among others? To me, all these words seem to point to the same byproducts of truth. In the end, they are just states. Any comments would be appreciated. I have a comment, but I'm going to wait for yours, Jenny.
Well, was certainly samadhi is a state, but it's in that samadhi. I mean, there are different types of samadhi. That some of them, objects are present, experience is present, and some there isn't. But in all of those words and all of those, everything in fact ultimately points to what we are. It's a question of seeing where it's pointing. No word in itself is really going to do the job, but there are some words, words like reality or awareness or consciousness, which do seem more easily to take you back to their referent. I don't think samadhi does so much, but certainly things like reality, consciousness, particularly reality does.
Yeah, I don't know that much about samadhi, but when I read this question, Rick, and I see the difference, I mean, for me, the word understanding is like the deeper, it's like right next to knowing. Understanding for me is not understanding to me is deeper and stronger and more permanent than insight, which I think of as a glimpse. For me, understanding gives you that knowing certainty that of factual truth. That's the distinction that I have for it.
Yes, yes. I think we all know when we really understand something. So I think in a way it's taking you back to a memory of having really understood.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember having an interview with Rupert in San Francisco, and I think we were talking about the Holy Spirit and how the direct path, kind of would refer to that term. And he talked about, he gave an example of someone who wasn't doing well in their relationship with their partner. And how would you know, how would one understand the guidance? I think we were talking about guidance in that. And he said you come to a place where, and he used the words, come what may, this relationship is over and it's time for you to leave. And the circumstances, whatever happens, they just happen. You have this knowing of certainty. And that's where you're so clear that there can't be two choices.
Yes, yes.
Come what may, he said. Those must
Yes,
be English terms or something.
yes. Francis has said something similar. He said that if you are not clear about what decision to make, that's because you haven't got all the facts. So just wait and see what facts come to light, and so don't make an instant decision. Just wait. If you can afford to wait, if it's okay to wait, then just wait, and more facts will come to light. If you have to make a decision quickly, very quickly, then you just do your best. But a lot of the time we don't have to.
Yeah. On page 110, there was a question about 2/3 down on the page. It says, is the purpose of awakening to point to the now where we are? Just one word, yes. Yes. Not much more to say on that.
No.
Yes. That was good. What else? Is there something that you want to look at on 110 or 11?
I think the rest of the ones on 110 are still this person trying to get further clarity on his big experiences. I think even that question about awakening.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Is also that. But what Francis said about the last question that he makes, what about loving other people? And Francis says loving other people is not loving. When there are no others, then there is the possibility of love. It's the only prerequisite. It's a necessary and sufficient condition for love, and that's just wonderful, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? This has really helped me to this idea of what love is so. I mean, and that love is impersonal
Yes.
and intimate.
Yeah.
That is such a distinction from what I used to think love was, an emotional kind of love, a special love. And to realize to begin to know, or to begin to have an understanding of what Jesus, the words that he used came from an understanding of this love.
Yes, yes. And it doesn't separate out anything at all. It's not just people. It includes animals. It includes all so-called objects around us. It's love which knows no boundaries of any kind.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
knows no object. It's completely objectless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on page 111, I just underlined the last sentence in the second paragraph under the question that said, what are these kind of experiences pointing to? Are they pointing just to the self, to something beyond time? And then Francis said, it is for the one who has these experiences to know where they are pointing. Ultimately, they point to the source, happiness, the self. However, a general statement could be made about these experiences. In this process of pointing towards the source, towards the self, they will unravel and reveal some of the complexities of the mind and some contractions in the body. They will free some knots. In that moment, we feel a great relief from these knots. We feel liberated. It is an exhilarating experience. They will also bring understanding, because the moment we have an experience beyond the mind, we realize there is a force behind it and that we are this force. If we truly have an experience of being beyond the mind, then there is no death for us any longer. I really like the way that sounds. I mean, I like the way that understanding. It's an out of body understanding.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's what he's really doing is he's saying, look at what was real. Look at what you learnt from those wonderful experiences that that you've had. Don't try to go back to the experiences. Just look at what you've learnt from them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for putting that rest of that poem in the chat. Someone put the rest of that poem in there. Thank you for that. Let's see. Let's look at page 112. Now, I didn't have much on 112, except the Hasidic, that statement on the Hasidic. There is a Hasidic story about an advanced truth seeker who went to see the rabbi, the teacher. Oh, he's talking about the student and the teacher. Yeah, that actually was pretty good. That was a nice little commentary of the teacher and the student.
Yes, and how the teaching operates. The fact that we start with the teaching in words, and then there's the teaching in silence. And then he says there's an even higher and more direct form of teaching, which is simply hanging around the teacher.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that's really important. In his satsangs, he's talked about going shopping with Jean Klein and seeing how he relates to sort of non-truth seekers he meets in the town, and helping him to prepare food, and also how he deals with his own mistakes when Jean Klein has made mistakes. How does he respond to that? So all of those things, seeing that in your teacher, it provides a model, really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why it can be very helpful to just be honest with your experience, not in a way to propagate a story or to carry a story on, but sometimes when you express your own direct experience as making a mistake, and people have maybe put you on a pedestal, it helps people to relate to, okay, so they're just like me.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's what I got from Rupert right away.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says at the top of on page 113, and this is a long answer to that question. In the Indian tradition, it is said that one should stick with one teacher. Would it be wrong then to visit other teachers? And he gave that long understanding that to be clear. And then at the top of page 113, second paragraph, it says, it is important that everything is included: beauty, love. Let me go back up to one paragraph to the top of page 113. Well, no, that's not going to pick it up. At the time, down in the bottom of page 112, I'll pick it up there. John then went to India. John Klein, talking about when he first went to Sri Lanka. During his stay, he became acquainted with the head monk. Oh, this was funny, of the Theravadan Buddhist order. I probably didn't say that right. They became friends, and apparently this monk wanted John Klein to stay with him and become his disciple. Oh, this was being the example. Although he didn't say so at the time, John then went to India and wrote him back with a thank you letter. Sometime later, he was surprised to receive a reply from this high ranking monk telling him that he was coming to India to visit him. At that time, John was staying with an Indian friend who was a singer, and when the monk arrived, he was in the middle of a recital. So John went out to welcome him and said, "Please come in. There is a beautiful recital going on." However, the monk said he could not because it was against the rules of his order. John said, "Well, I respected that, but at the same time, I felt it was not my path because there was some restriction." Oh, this is about freedom. There was a
Yes,
lack. What?
exactly.
Yeah.
That's the difference, really,
Yeah.
between the traditional paths and the one that the monk was following, and the direct path. And direct path is the path of freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a lack of freedom. It is important that everything is included: beauty, love, intelligence, and life. Life is a celebration. Consider everything that makes you feel happy, that makes you happy, as a gift, not feel, but makes you happy as a gift from God, and say thank you. Feel gratitude for being alive, for being conscious, for having been given this extraordinary gift of life, and for being able to look for your true nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have to be free to do that in our own way. And that kind of freedom says, well, don't allow any teacher to tell you you should be doing this, you should be doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also let people, allow other people to live in their own freedom.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Not to hurt or be cruel to people. I think there's social order that needs to that takes place in the body mind social system, but in freedom of creative thought and expression.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have any questions? Does anyone want to have any comments or want to put your hand up? What a helpful clarifying distinction. Yes. Oh, yes, Zachary, thank you for that. Comment from Rick West. What came first, the book, teaching, or the perfume? Rick. You're funny. You always have these questions like this. What do you think it was? This book reveals our essence, truth. Once interested and open to the truth, it's all one starts to see everywhere. I know. Accordingly, open this book at random, and you'll often notice that just a few sentences is more than enough to reveal the truth. Our very essence, after closing the book, that very same perfume, you, continues to linger everywhere. See, you already had the answer in your question. Once the genie is out of the bottle, it's seen everywhere. Yes, everyone agrees. And this is why when you have understanding and clarity around these ideas, you can go read the Bible, you can read Advaita, you can listen to a great teacher, and you can feel the vibration if it's off.
Yes, yes.
It's like, I don't know. Could be Rupert, and you could say, I mean, it's not likely. It's more likely. This is just my humble opinion. It's more likely I'm going to be off, but you have a vibration. I can hear. You know that there's a King James verse in the book of Luke and Matthew where it says, "Consider the birds of the air. Would Solomon in all his glory would not be adorned like one of these?" And then there's a statement about you being much higher of the birds of the air. And I think that's an off statement
Yes,
because
yes.
there cannot be hierarchy in truth.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It says at the let's see. Oh, this was on page 114. I thought that whole paragraph was just a beautiful statement. It says, the questioner says, there seems to be such a gulf between the teacher and the student. And this statement that Francis said, the teacher may seem to be one step ahead. We think we have understood something, and indeed we may have done so. However, there is a tendency to crystallize this understanding, to formulate it, and this creates an understander, an ego, a fixed view of how things are. Although the teacher may have formulated the same understanding that enabled us to have a glimpse of our true nature in the first place, nevertheless, when we next approach him, the teaching he gives will be completely new and fresh. Immediately, our formulation is dissolved and we are taken to a deeper level of understanding.
Yes, and we actually saw that in operation earlier in this chapter when he replaced the analogy of the sun and the moon with an analogy of the ocean and the waves to take someone to the next step of understanding. And that's so he says, no, you just leave the sun and the moon out of it from now on. We're going to carry on with the ocean and the waves.
Yes.
That was great.
Yes.
I had a long discussion with Francis some time ago, almost a year ago now, I think, about time and space and memory and dimensions. It was very wide ranging, some of it quite complicated mathematics, and but at the end of all of it, and this is the one thing that stayed with me, he said, my answers, what they can do, I hope they do, is that instead of bringing more knowledge, that they bring more unknowing. And that was perfect.
Yes. Yes.
Because he'd given so many answers to me on so many different little points, and we explored so many alternative models and theories, and then that was the final thing that he said.
Yes. Yes. He says, as this cycle of formulation and dissolution continues, we may develop a great love for the teacher who is instigating the process. This love is very precious. But a good teacher, which means in this case, one who is completely impersonal, will not let this love be directed towards himself as a person. He will be like a slippery fish, impossible to get a hold of or settle onto. This enables the student to see that what he really loves is understanding, intelligence, consciousness, and not a person.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's just like, doesn't that feel good?
Absolutely. It's a beautiful description of the real healthy relationship between
Yeah.
a teacher and a student.
Well, let's read on, because this is a relationship between partners too. This is a relationship between your partner, your husband, your wife, your
Yeah.
kids. It says at this point it is possible for the true relationship with the teacher to begin. It is a relationship of impersonal love. As this relationship unfolds, we become increasingly sensitive to the obstacles that prevent this meeting in the heart, this impersonal intimacy. And I'm going to pause right there for just a minute, because I am experiencing this for the first time in my life with my wife. And I'm finding that it is matured to beyond a getting mechanism that most relationships start with. It's gone beyond any kind of sexual expectations or trade-offs or doing things that make me happy or make her happy. I'm finding that this is available, and it's just sort of, it's starting to show up and sort of show itself as a new experience for me.
Yes, that's
How,
beautiful.
how would you comment to that, Jenny, with you and Richard?
It's something that happened over time. I think we just became closer and closer, and now it's when we talk, there's no separate, for me there's no separate people talking. Often there's such a natural harmony between us, and yeah, there just aren't. I don't feel he's a separate being. I don't feel a sense of separation, and I know that he doesn't feel that sense of separation either. We a couple of days ago, one of our cats disappeared and has never been seen again, and she doesn't normally go far from home. And we never needed to talk about it. There was of course sadness, because we both had a very close relationship with her, and again, she was not separate from me. I felt what she felt, and so did Richard. But the two of us, when we could see that she wasn't likely to come back, we were able to share that sadness without ever speaking, just in quietness, and also to share it with our other cat, who was also sad that she had gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that wouldn't have happened in the same way in the past. One of us would have just gone and been quiet on our own. Probably me. I wouldn't have wanted any interaction with anyone or anything. But it's something that's developed as a result of this teaching. There's no barriers.
I also have that relationship developing with my kids, so I don't
Yeah.
think it's just with your spouse.
Yes. Yeah.
Dorothy said, I hope you get to paragraph 2 on page 116. Why don't we just go to that? It says let's see, the question goes back to 115.
Yeah.
Many traditions refer to surrendering at the feet of the guru. Oh, this is so good. If the real guru is the impersonal presence and not a physical person, what is really meant by the feet of the guru? Well, we'll come back to some more stuff, but I want to honor your request to go to the second paragraph, or to paragraph 2 and on page 116. It says, at a certain stage, this is the top of the page on page 116, at a certain stage in meditation. Now, this began with talking about meditation. At a certain stage in meditation, it is mostly your body that appears. So your body naturally becomes the principal object of your contemplation. At this stage, the principal offering to consciousness is the body with all its feelings and sensations. And this is the second paragraph. Be willing to completely lose control over the body, over the feelings. It is our will to make things happen, to play God. Let me pause there after saying that. Be willing to completely lose control over the body, over the feelings. It is our will to make things happen, to play God, little God, that prevents them from happening, that gets in the way of the natural flow of things. Understand that you are not in control of anything, that there is no choice you make as an individual, no decision. Should we end right there and leave everybody hanging on a thread?
This is something that really does require a very deep self-inquiry, I think. But once it's understood, then life really does become very easy, because it's not that we don't do anything, that we just sit around doing nothing. That's not what it means. We just allow the body to respond in a natural way. We don't interfere with it. We don't try to control it. We don't try to make it conform to some idea of what it should be doing. We just allow it to respond naturally, knowing that all of its responses are cosmic events, governed by the universe as an integrated whole, not governed by any kind of separate self. But to really feel that requires quite a deep self-inquiry, I found anyway.
So I don't make decisions on whether to do this book study. This is not a decision that I make.
It's a decision that your body mind makes, but it isn't a decision that you, a separate entity, Bill, makes at all. It's a thought arose at some point several years ago now, which said, why don't we have a book study, these wonderful books? Why don't we do that? And that arose, and that came from the universe, and that thought led to other thoughts, and then those other thoughts led to actions like, setting it up and organizing all these Zoom meetings, but there was just an allowing of the body mind to do it.
Right.
It's when we claim it as I did this, I, me, Jenny, or I, me, Bill, did this.
Right.
That the problem arises.
Right.
That there can't ever be any claiming. There's no chooser. It was just a natural happening that arose within the universe, and very beautiful.
Yeah. And then it populated with all these other body minds that are with us right now. And
none of them chose.
and
again.
no one chose to be here. This is consciousness just in the play of the sandbox.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, pretty cool, right?
Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I had an impromptu conversation with Francis in what I interviewed about 25 of the speakers for our Pure Presence Summit in September. And one thing that was so clear, it just really was such a profound statement from Francis when I had this dialogue in Awakening with him. And he said, there are no accidents. It's not an accident that we're having this discussion right here, right now.
Yes.
And that was just as clear as clear blue sky. It was just so clear and so absolute.
Yes.
There are no accidents. Well, we've come to the end of our time, our friends. It's so good to see all of you, and thank you for your presence and in availing yourself to be in the sandbox with us. It was fun, again, always is. And we love it. And thank you, Jenny, for being a great co-host. And I saw Melissa Goodnight in the house. Melissa, I love you and blessings to you over on the West Coast. I miss your interactions as well. And we'll have to do that again with another book down the road. And you all have a beautiful day, and we'll see you again on Tuesday, or if not before. I see a lot of familiar faces that often show up in different places. So thank you all. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
I'm gonna unmute everyone if you want to say, oh no, I can't unmute. How come I can't unmute? Well, bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sweet. Bye-bye.